The Ministry of Timelines bears no official responsibility for the content of this research. 4 interchronal gateway devices have been reported missing from the Ministry Vault. This timeline, along with 3 others, has been identified as a candidate for the theft. The committee has ordered the recovery of these devices as the highest priority for the Ministry. Further agents have been deployed. (2371). The galactic community was called concerning a permanent seat on the council for the Pharyngian Assembly, the Psychic Treefolk. Supported by the Accords and the Rock People, the vote passed by a thin margin. What even happened to democracy in this galaxy? A year later, Isaac Newton, lead scientist for the Democratic Cats Republic of Cats, started research into the possibility of allowing reproduction between Roidarians and other species. Despite this being a bit pervy and taking money away from actual research, could it be true? Were actual cat girls maybe just a few decades away? After being bombed and invaded, the restoration of Far Away began in 2373. Repairs were finally starting to be made to the mildly irradiated and slightly destroyed world. The clones vowed, never again. An assault army of the Galactic Republic mutinied while in transit and refused to communicate. Starbase sensors indicated they had landed on a tomb world. It was unknown at the time what they were doing there, but it was believed they might have been trying to set up an independent colony. Surely they couldn't, right? The new state, the Democratic Roidarians Republic of Roids, formed from the carcass of the Galactic Republic, sharing the constitution of Far Away, and they agreed to attack the Pharyngians. But only when the truce was over, of course. Galactic law had to be respected. And then there would be aliens to free. The Rock Peeps voted to remove their own seat, throwing shade and some furniture at the custodian, the Democratic Roidarians Republic of Roids, and their leader Meowly Cyrus in the process. The Rock stood in solitude, but without a seat, they had to. During the next Galactic Council session, debating the removal of the permanent seat of the Galactic State of Rock, it was pointed out Far Away still had not granted full independence for the Gnogian state that they had laboured to free and stabilise. Far Away releasing their vassal, the restored Gnogian Republic, only for it then to become a vassal under the Pharyngians a mere month later. The move prompted outrage and cemented an anti-Pharyngian Federation alliance between the Blom, Far Away, and the Cats. There was such a deadlock in galactic proceedings that the Pharyngian treefolk even suggested perhaps it was time to completely discard the structure of the galactic community as a whole. Dark times indeed. At the beginning of 2383, even as ideological battle lines were being drawn for the following decade, the galaxy's scientific community published a spatial storm advisory, citing the cause as centuries of heavy FTL travel and the prevalence of psionic sapience. Space Storm Widdig caused disruption to FTL, shield, and sensor technologies in nearly half the solar systems of the galaxy. At least people stopped looking at their phones for 5 minutes. Ministry note: Ministry of Timelines agents assigned to this timeline speculated that this could be yet another symptom of temporal weapons, itself hinting at a possible arms race occurring behind the scenes. Considerable caution was advised. By declaring a truce with their new vassal, the Pharyngians forced the Kitty Far Away power block to be unable to legally declare war for a further 10 years. The bloc ground their teeth in anger at the bull roar war system concocted no doubt by basement dwellers with no real insight into how the real world works. Although they had no option but to accept this legal precedent if they were to abide by galactic law. Far Away psychics received a troubling insight into the true nature of the Shroud in 2385. A report was filed from a Ministry of Timelines agent posing as a therapist serving in a Far Away psychic research facility. What follows is an excerpt from an interview she conducted with a psychic citizen of Far Away. In a painful moment of clarity, the true nature of existence is laid bare. A multiverse, where thousands of galaxies like this one are locked in endless cycles of conflict. It begins, it ends, and then it begins again, each time with trillions of lives hanging in the balance. So it is, a voice whispers, and so it shall always be. Subject extraction was successful, further repercussions limited. 2387. The Pharyngian Accord's power block tried to unseat the Custodian. The Democratic Roidarians' Republic of Roids tied up their proposal in almost infinite red tape, forcing the Pharyngian Assembly block to propose it again and again and again, only for the Cats to point out, in various forms or other, "Sorry, your great submission has a misspelling on line 4782, unfortunately rendering it void. Better luck next time." Pricks. Martian engineers got quite philosophical with their long-term efforts to make Mars a copy of Earth, wondering if it were possible to improve on the original and still claim that they were staying true to its enduring spirit. The question was answered when they gazed across at their planetary neighbour to see Earth now a tomb world. Yes, we could definitely improve on that, the Martians giggled to themselves, from their Garden of Eden. Perhaps having been forcibly resettled from Earth to what had been once the barren world of Mars was actually the best thing that could have ever happened to them. In 2390, faraway psychics managed to gain the blessing of the Shroud, offloading nearly half of the power requirements of their massive navy to the shifting mindscape full of chaotic energy. At roughly the same time, all across faraway space, warship engineers noted tiny spatial rifts opening near their vessels, with beams of power being directed into the reactors and batteries. A coincidence, surely. After 4 years of redrafting written proposals, quite the undertaking for a species that was psychic and had twigs for fingers, a proposal to unseat the Custodian finally passed scrutiny, with the official complaint finally in the system detailing the corruption and underhanded favours handed out by their predecessor government. The Cat Republic resigned their custodianship in protest of the inaction and corruption rampant in the galactic community, voting in favour of the motion to remove their own rule. How unlike Cats to be so capricious. After a fusillade of insults between the faraway colonies and the Accords, Faraway proposed in 2392 that the Accords become their vassal to demonstrate their superior power and moral high ground. It's over, the Accords. Faraway has the high ground. Worried about the state of the galaxy, and with the possible threat of more genocide of their citizens, Faraway devoted more research to doomsday weapons. The intent was to deter any attacker from such provocative actions again. And when had an arms race ever been a problem in any of human history? After all, Faraway earnestly hoped they would never have to use any invented doomsday weapon, and that sentiment had definitely always worked out for the best. In classic understatement, Mars destroyed the Pharyngian flagship in 2396. The actions of the Patriots killed millions, and they'd do it again. Honestly, Mars would look more into cloning technology if they realised how quickly they could create new life for them to horribly murder in the bloodiest way possible. You almost have to admire them, in the same way Ash admired the Xenomorph. Faraway gave these still reeling Pharyngians an ultimatum. Release your vassal states and repress sapience, or we will attack in 3 months. Maybe they could build a new flagship in that time. The threats escalated, involving a great deal of posturing and saber rattling, before Faraway demanded that the Pharyngians release their subjects again or face a war of liberation. The Pharyngians then revealed a secret agreement made decades ago, sent by drug-addled Blom diplomats. Why even say drug-addled? I could just say Blom diplomats, and the meaning would be the same. To become a subject of the Pharyngians. Seeing their former friends, the Blom, turn against them, and not wanting the bloodshed of an all-out galactic war that could cause the death of billions, again, Faraway decided to immediately surrender and cede the vassalship of the Blom to the Pharyngians. Upon leaving the negotiations table, the immortal Faraway head of state, Captain Overdaddy Bao Wan, was heard muttering something along the lines of, "You'll be back. Soon. You'll see." You'll remember you belong to me. You'll be back. Time will tell. You'll remember that I served you well. Oceans rise. Empires fall. We've seen each other through it all. And when push comes to shove, I will send a fully armed battalion to remind you of my love. It seemed historically significant and somewhat poignant, at least until he continued, tell me more, was it love at first sight? Tell me more, did she put up a fight? Anyway, 2400. Savvy interstellar legal experts from the communal state of Rock noticed a lack of gambling regulation in interstellar maritime law. They subsequently set up space habitats around black holes in various systems to allow patrons from across the galaxy to while away a pleasant evening playing blackjack or roulette while enjoying plenty of high-quality alcoholic drinks. A regular at one of the casino habitats, Xenophobic Dave, was quoted saying, "I'm just here to bankrupt these stinking idiot Xenos. All I have to do is keep doubling my call-in, and whenever I win they'll be forced to pay out more money than their empire is worth, which is probably nothing. Being idiot Xenos." Xenophobic Dave had no idea how house limits worked, and the communal state of Rock simply smiled and agreed with him, their ideal patron, with millions more like him gambling every last penny of their money directly into their coffers. Silly Xenophobic Dave. When will he learn? Armed with assurances of a fast war and minimal civilian casualties by the Admiralty, Faraway declared a liberation war on the Pharyngian coalition in 2408. The fateful day had been forestalled by 20 years, the Hawaiians having tried every peaceful route to liberate oppressed sapients under the trees. Instead of contacting or listening to Faraway, the Pharyngian bloc had only annexed and repressed more aliens. It became time for a final challenge to determine if repressive regimes, or freedom and self-determination, would rule this galaxy. The Faraway colonies declared a defensive war of liberation against the Pharyngian Assembly and all the empires that had sided with the trees in their quest to vassalize the galaxy. The Martians, true to form, refused to pick a side that cooperated with Xenos. The fact that the Faraway colonies brought in their cat allies and the Pharyngian Assembly called the Accords into the war meant that Mars did not care about the war at all. The presence of aliens on both sides outweighed there also being humans on both sides of this war. A Martian ambassador was quoted as saying, "We can't answer the phone right now, we're currently at the Winchester, having a nice cold pint," waiting for all of this to blow over. The first part of Faraway's two-part plan went off without a hitch. They and the DRRR blasted into the Sol system and struck at the Accords Navy in space dock. The entire Martian Navy was parked in orbit above Mars, its ships unmanned, as several fleets from far away and the Accord ships that managed to muster in time were blowing each other up in the Sol system. Those on the surface of the now paradise world of Mars saw a spectacular laser and fireworks show shining throughout the night sky for about a week. Faraway and the Cats were victorious in the Battle of Sol. The vast majority of the Accord's fleets were taken by surprise and eliminated. Faraway, refusing to fight further and risk shedding civilian blood, demanded the surrender of the Accords. The Accords tentatively agreed to a truce. Their diplomats made it sound like a good compromise had been reached, one that benefited both sides without too much sacrifice from either. Experts, and anyone paying the least bit of attention, noted that their limited ability to perform any further naval activities meant that they didn't really have much of a choice. Having knocked the Accords out of the war, the Freedom Alliance, as they were starting to be called, moved to crush the Pharyngian fleet as well. Unfortunately, they could not find a trace of them anywhere in the galaxy, due to the tree's impenetrable cloaking technology. Shrubberies. It was literally just a lot of shrubberies. They created decorative arrangements around their ships, making them look like forests in space. The other side literally couldn't see the trees for the wood. And what was meant to be a lightning war instead dragged on into a second year. The Faraway leadership was not happy. Many admirals were sacked for their overly ambitious and bullheck plan. The Rocks Trees and their allies, meanwhile, launched guerrilla raids into DRRR space and Far Away in space. Worse was still to come for Far Away. The Gnogian warriors' fleet from the restored Gnogian Republic, with help from the Dragon's privateers fleet from the Pyaran system, made their way to what they believed was the homeworld of the faraway colonies and started bombarding it from space. The Gnogian officer in command watched as the bombs turned cities to dusty dustiness, and sent a smug request suggesting that Faraway surrender. "What do you mean?" came the reply. "Surrender," the officer said, a little too excitedly, "or we shall continue to bomb your homeworld into the dustful dustitude." "Our homeworld?" said the faraway diplomat with some measure of distraction. He snapped a couple of slats of the blind of his window slightly further apart. Beyond, people went about their day. A child bought ice cream from a van, birds flew in the distance, caught in the beautiful daylight streaming through what few clouds were drifting lazily past the sun. "It doesn't look like we're being bombarded," he said, mostly to himself. "I assure you, you are being bombarded," came the reply. "I can't say I'm terribly convinced at the moment," said the diplomat. "You are," insisted the officer quite strongly. "And if you do not surrender," he said, continuing to work himself into a minor frenzy, "there will soon be nothing left to surrender." "Are you sure?" asked the diplomat, stretching out the final syllable as he stretched his neck to still see no bombs falling outside his window. "Yes, I sent this message as a courtesy, but you are tempting me, sir, and maybe I will not stop until there is nothing left of Nexon." "Nothing left of," said the diplomat, his voice trailing off. "Please hold." As the Gnogian officer listened to a Hawaiian rendition of Girl from Ipanema, the faraway diplomat contacted the planet Nexon, a distant faraway colony on the other side of the galaxy. He was told that the fleet was seen early, the cities evacuated, and while the bombing was an inconvenience, the resolve of Nexon was bolstered, and they agreed that instead of redirecting the fleets to Far Away, the actual homeworld, as indicated by the galaxy-wide and very difficult to get wrong naming convention, they would maintain the charade. The faraway diplomat then thanked the Nexon colony, made a note to recommend them for medals of valor, and pressed a button on his phone. "Hello?" he said tentatively. "Is the planet Nexon ready to surrender?" came the shrill Gnogian shout. "Never! We do not deal with terrorists. Your acts we will be taken up with the Galactic Council." Boom! The Gnogian laughed, enjoying the sounds of disaster he was hearing. "You will change your mind, pathetic clone, when there is little left of your homeworld on Nexon." The faraway diplomat pretended to be distraught, but not too hard. "Little left? No! That would be unthinkable! But if I were you, and I don't want to tell you how to do your job, I wouldn't want to be a Gnogian officer who only did half a job on bombing their enemy's homeworld of Nexon. Boom, bam! Anyway, cheerio, keep up the good work." 2412 marked the Great Battle of Hbra. The DRRR and faraway fleets were ambushed by space shrubberies, which turned out to instead be Pharyngian cloaked ships. After all of the Cat Republic's FTL inhibitors mysteriously went offline, the main fleet of Pharyngian's allies rampaged through Democratic Republic space. Cat Republic engineers finally brought the FTL inhibitor at Hbra online, thus preventing the cloaked Pharyngians from fleeing DRRR space. A majority of the navies of Far Away, the Democratic Rhodarian Republic of Roid, the Communal State of Rock, and the Pharyngian Assembly then converged in the Hbra system. Lasers lit up the system for weeks as a bloody battle ensued to decide who would win this war. The Pharyngian Assembly and Communal State of Rock lost significantly more ships than the Freedom Alliance in the battle, paving the way for a likely faraway victory in the war. Despite the massive body count being racked up, Mars still didn't care. 2413. With their enemies decimated, the Allies split up. Far Away headed towards the Pharyngian seat of government to bring peace by force, while the Cats took a stroll in rock space, the kind of stroll that included blowing up any military assets they could find, much like Martian Golf. The Pharyngians grew ever more frustrated in 2414 at the utterly apathetic attitude of Far Away to the bombing of their homeworld. We've been bombing your homeworld for years, you idiots! Why won't you surrender? They were answered not by Faraway, but by the Gnogians, who reported that their bombardment of Nexon was bloody and destructive, as instructed. The Pharyngians, understanding the naming convention that meant the homeworld of Faraway was called Faraway, finally realised their mistake. Perhaps the war was not going the way they had planned after all. The ace up their sleeve turned out to be bird poop, which was very difficult to wash off. The Faraway Navy fought their way to the Pharyngian homeworld in 2417. The actual Pharyngian homeworld, of course, and not a relatively inconsequential colony halfway across the galaxy. You see, understanding the significance of entering the right system, the Pharyngian leadership realised the war was lost, and fled. Faraway installed new leadership and enforced their better and more noble and just good, look, we're the good guys, okay, constitution on yet another empire. After successfully receiving the unconditional surrender of the Pharyngian Assembly, the vassals and distinct minority cultures of Pharyngian Assembly space were allowed to exist independently in the galaxy once more. Captain Overdaddy Bao Wan, the head of state of the faraway colonies, gave a speech after victory was announced. I want to reiterate that I will not hesitate to use our hypothetical world cracker to blow up our own planets or your planets to preserve peace. We will not allow our people to become slaves again. If push comes to shove, I will send a fully armed will cracker to remind you of my love. Da 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 ya da ba ba da. Oh, sorry, yep, going on. The Blom, the Blatt, the Pharyngians, the Gnogians, and many more people rejoiced, as they were now free and once again had self-determination. The galaxy celebrated. Return of the Jedi style, dancing and singing and eating their fire-cooked enemies and using their skulls as tom-toms, except the Blom, who were of course deeply upset about the prospect of having to press buttons again. In the aftermath, with most of the galaxy now free, Faraway finally managed to edit their constitution. Until that point, their democratically elected leader ruled for life, which of course hadn't been a problem when clones had a lifespan of around a mere decade. That Bao Wan had become an immortal psychic superhuman, well, things needed to change for democratic elections to once again take place. All clones, from then on, would be legally declared dead after 10 years and become a new, born-again person. In the first faraway election in over 70 years, the incumbent Captain Bao Wan unsurprisingly won. Hey, hold on, did anything even change? Wait, weren't we promised catgirls by now? This concludes our analysis of the Sapient Liberation era. Please refer to the next chapter of this report for further details on the Accords timeline.